The What Works Clearinghouse's Providing Reading Interventions for Students in Grades 4 through 9 practice guide provides evidence-based recommendations for supporting students' reading and writing development in intervention settings. In this video, I will demonstrate developing students' world knowledge, also known as background knowledge, so that the students know enough about a topic to read and understand a text related to that topic. This practice is part of Recommendation 3, Part A. Build students' world and word knowledge so they can make sense of the text. Throughout the video, notice that I plan a brief but engaging introduction to the topic to familiarize the students with the topic and develop essential knowledge, and briefly introduce the topic before reading to develop knowledge that might help students understand what they are reading. Before reading, I want to activate and develop students' world knowledge, or relevant knowledge that is critical to making sense of a text. World knowledge is also known as background knowledge. Students need enough knowledge about a topic to read and understand a text on that topic. Strong world knowledge enables readers to make inferences and to make sense of words that have multiple meanings. Provide a brief introduction to the topic before reading to help students develop world knowledge that might help them understand what they are reading. This can be done by asking students to read an easier, brief passage before presenting the higher level text on the same topic, presenting a short video clip, podcast, or brief informational lecture with illustrations, or asking students questions about the topic before reading. Not only will this provide students with an opportunity to think about what they have read or learned, but it can also help engage them in the topic. The text I'm using today is on the eco-pyramid. This is a topic unfamiliar to many of my students and is a great opportunity for my students to gain more practice with understanding content area text. Before reading this complex text, I'll have students read this easier, brief passage on organisms in an ecosystem to build the world knowledge they'll need to understand the more complex text on the eco-pyramid. And so today what we're going to do, in order to warm up our brains, we're going to read this kind of information about ecosystems and just to remind us what they are and some of the different organisms that we can find in those ecosystems. And after we warm up our brains and get our brains thinking, we're going to read this text that's actually from your science class that's a little bit more deep information. But the warm-up reading is going to really help us prepare to think deeply about this science text. So the first thing we're going to do is look at 3 pictures of ecosystems. So what is this ecosystem that we see here?
The rainforest.
A rainforest, right. So what are some of the organisms, what are some of the plants and animals that you might find in a rainforest?
Frog.
Frog.
Snakes.
Snakes.
Crocodiles.
And like big
Fish.
cats.
Jaguars, fish.
Crocodiles.
Crocodiles. What about some plants?
Like palm tree-ish.
Maybe palm tree-ish things.
Really big.
A lot of vines.
A lot of vines.
Really big trees.
The snapping ones.
Snapping plants.
Yeah.
Okay, what is this ecosystem?
Fish.
Ocean.
The ocean.
More snakes.
More snakes, right. So as we're reading too, I want you guys to think about what would happen, say, in the rainforest if one of these plants or animals became endangered or extinct. How would it change that ecosystem?
It would probably like just set a lot of things off. Like, let's say a mouse needed to eat, and then like the mouse died off, but then the snakes needed to eat the mice, but then the snakes died off because there were no mice.
That would be a chaotic chain reaction to kind of that food chain, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so right now we're going to read this little bit lighter, just kind of warm up our brains, remind us of what ecosystems are, and those plants and animals are the producers and consumers that live within that ecosystem. So I'm going to hand out this text, and then whenever you're ready, you can just kind of read it on your own, and I'm going to be listening in. And I just want you guys to be thinking about, again, what we were saying. What are the producers and consumers, or the plants and animals that live within these ecosystems? right, so let's come back together. So now I want you guys to think about two things that you either learned or were reminded of while reading. And when I say go, I want you to turn and talk to your partner. And I want you to use text evidence. So I want you to point to where in the passage reminded you or of what you already knew, or where you learned something new. Okay? So go.
Alright, so
in this passage,
right here where it
it was
says
reminded
what are
that birds
producers and
squirrels
consumers and
help,
ecosystems,
like
it reminded me
spread the
that
seeds so we can get new
producers
other
are the
animals could eat, and
things
also
that make food for the consumers, and some
also
producers
help new
are
plants grow
trees,
and
grass, and
regrow the
algae.
plants.
So that's really
So
good. So that
something
helps
that
you
like reminded me, like,
recognize that everything in an
it, like they
ecosystem
reminded
has
me was
a
like this
role,
part where it was
right?
like
Showing someone
consumers
has a
cannot
chain.
make their own food,
good.
so they
Okay.
like eat plants for the animals to get their energy. That like just reminded me of what I used to like. What we used to talk about at school and everything.
All right, so let's come back together. So now we're going to read this passage from our science course about eco-pyramid, and it's a little bit more dense. It goes into what each of those types of consumers are and how they all work together within that ecosystem to keep it healthy and thriving. So I'm going to hand you guys these passages, and whenever you're ready, you can just start reading.